today's age of blockbuster franchises and their massive fan bases, much has been said about the state of fandom, whether it be the online wars waged between studios and fans, or even worse, between fans and fans, or the toxicity that's grown from all sides of the discourse surrounding the fictional universes that we love. Few Hollywood franchises have managed to escape the ever-growing noise, but one that stands tall and sets an example for the rest is none other than Planet of the Apes, and I'm here to talk about why I think that is the case. If you like what I do here and want to show your support, be sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. Enjoy the video. And welcome back to Ape Nation, your number one source for all things Planet of the Apes on YouTube. My name is Josh, and before I get into today's video, I wanted to give a bit of an update on what's going on with me and the channel at the moment. So for those who did not see my post from about 2 weeks ago, the reason that I have not been posting videos much lately is due to the fact that I am in the process of moving. However, and without getting into all of the more personal details, that has become a bit of an unstable and chaotic situation for me, as I am also in the process of trying to get out of my current job to find a better one, making the moving situation extra challenging. I've been stuck having to travel back and forth between 2 states with a bunch of other things taking up my attention, so staying consistent on here has obviously been a little bit hard to do, and why, for those wondering, I still have not gotten the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes reaction video finished for you all. For those who have edited reaction videos, I'm sure you understand why, with how time consuming they can be. Of course, I will continue to upload as much as I can, as I have so many video topics and ideas I've been wanting to get to, but for the time being, things will be a little less frequent. I have a whole list of videos I want to get out to you all this month, including a special Halloween themed one, but I just wanted to be transparent with you guys and give you all a heads up on what's been going on, why things have been so quiet on this channel as of late, and what things will be like going forward, at least for the time being. Now, with all of that boring housekeeping out of the way, let's get to why you're really here today. For those who keep up with film and entertainment industry news, you may have seen a somewhat controversial article from Variety that made its way around the internet last week discussing the current state of fandom when it comes to the biggest and most beloved Hollywood franchises and properties, such as Marvel, DC, Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, The Boys, the list goes on and on. For those interested, I've linked the article down in the description below. Whether you agree with any of what it's saying or not, I think something we can all at least somewhat agree on is that there's a lot of tension in modern fandom, a lot of people on both sides of every aisle are unhappy, and that things have gotten way out of control. Without getting into the thick of it, fans are more at odds with each other, as well as the franchise they care about, more so today than at any point in history. Well, for the most part.
George Lucas raped our childhood. George Lucas raped our childhood. George Lucas raped our childhood.
Yikes. The hordes of angry fans raging against certain studios on social media and on YouTube over things like certain character or story choices is nothing new, but it's undeniably gotten louder and more aggressive in recent years, with online petitions, review bombing efforts on websites like Rotten Tomatoes, clashing with other fans who hold opposing views, whether it be toxic positivity or negativity, and now even with studios and filmmakers pushing back against their own fans. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. It's even gotten into dangerous territory, with actors and filmmakers being sent death threats and having their safety put at risk, as well as ugly political arguments and culture wars permeating its way into and driving much of the discourse. Reading through this article last week, on top of making me realize just how sick and tired I am of being part of so many of these fan bases, really got me thinking, and ultimately asking the question, does Planet of the Apes have the best fan base out there? Now, seeing as I run a Planet of the Apes YouTube channel, of course I may have a slight bias. However, on the other side of that coin, being the person to run this channel has given me the opportunity to see and interact with more of this fan base than a lot of other people have, and I've been able to get some actual perspective on this question. And after having that perspective, which has only grown in the last year, I've gotta say, absolutely it is. But why? What is it about Planet of the Apes that's managed to find this perfect balance? What is it about Planet of the Apes that's allowed it to be the rare long-running franchise that is beloved, iconic, and been able to retain longtime fans while creating new ones, all while avoiding being associated with the toxicity, vitriol, and controversy that's made every other major franchise a headache to talk about nowadays? What is it about Planet of the Apes that's created what I consider to be the best, if not one of the best fan bases you could ask for as a studio, as a filmmaker, and most importantly, as a fellow fan? The first thing that came to my mind when trying to come up with reasons why I think that Planet of the Apes has managed to avoid all of this controversy, managed to avoid all of this toxicity, and been able to be this beacon of hope and shining light in the era of massive online fandom is, first and foremost, we don't get a lot of Planet of the Apes stuff. You know, we get one movie, whether it be every 3 years or every 7 years. We occasionally get a video game. We've gotten 3 in the last 2 or so decades. We get a book every once in a while. We get comics here and there, but we don't get a whole lot of stuff. And because we don't get a lot of stuff, I think it makes fans a lot more appreciative when we do get stuff. But getting stuff just in general isn't enough to be appreciative. It has to actually be good. It has to be of quality. And that leads me to my second point, the quality of Planet of the Apes content, the quality of the films, the quality of the books, the quality of the games, the quality of the things we get. It's not all perfect. Some of it's just okay, but for the most part, it's at the very least good, if not great or excellent. The things that we get are, for the most part, very consistent. And that's something that a lot of fans, at least in today's era, really look forward to and really want, is consistency. And that's something that we get. That paired with the fact that we don't get a lot of stuff, and the stuff that we do get is not very frequent, I think those two things combined make fans a lot more appreciative and a lot more excited about stuff, rather than focusing on what they necessarily don't like, even if there is stuff that they don't like, which there definitely is in this franchise. Another thing that's worth noting is just how big the Planet of the Apes franchise is and where it falls in the overall zeitgeist of all the fandoms and franchises and big IPs that we talk about today. You know, like I mentioned up top, there's the big dogs like Marvel and Star Wars and DC and Lord of the Rings that everyone's always talking about, because there's more or less always something going on with those franchises. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. Whereas Planet of the Apes, it's not quite big enough to always be in the news. It's not big enough to always be something that people are talking about, unless you're like me, who's obsessed with this franchise, or someone who subscribes to this channel and is obsessed with this franchise. But for the most part, Planet of the Apes isn't quite on the same level of popularity. It's not on the same level of mass appeal as those other franchises, but it is still very much a mass appeal franchise. It appeals to a lot of people, hence why it's been so successful and so many people like it, and we keep getting more of them. But because it's not quite on that same level, because it's not quite as beloved, because it's not quite as popular, it makes it easier for this franchise to avoid that toxicity, and makes it easier for this franchise to avoid such intense discourse. When the movies and whatever else we get aren't as talked about, it just has less potential to be polarizing or to be some sort of lightning rod that sets off arguments that we see with so many of these other franchises for whatever reason, whether it's just because a movie isn't good or because a movie's divisive, whether it's some sort of, and I'm not going to get too into this, but culture war divide or just some other sort of division. The less talked about this franchise is, the less popular it is, the less likely it lends itself to that. So it finds itself in this sweet spot where it's just popular enough to be big, but it's not popular enough to be that big so that it has the potential to fall into those traps. And then another reason, and this isn't necessarily unique to the Planet of the Apes franchise, it's very much something that is embedded within a lot of popular franchises such as Star Wars or Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, but Planet of the Apes, I think more than any other series of films, ever since the original 1968 film, is more known to be allegorical of socially progressive themes and ideas and values, and has worn that aspect on its sleeve with every single film much more assertively and aggressively than I think almost any other major franchise. That's not to say that people with opposing values and opposing views can't still enjoy it and can't even still come to some sort of understanding of what the film's trying to say and appreciate what the films are trying to say. It's just these films, more than any others, absolutely pushes those types of themes and ideas. And I think to a degree, it kind of keeps the more vocal viewers from engaging with it the way that they have with these other big franchises. I don't think that's necessarily the biggest reason why, but I think it's definitely something to be acknowledged because, of course, and again, I don't really want to get too much into this because I really just don't like talking about this kind of stuff, especially not on my channel. The culture war stuff that goes on in our society today, whether it be when we're talking about movies and TV or just, you know, politics and our worldviews in general, it's just really, really aggressive nowadays. It's really intense. And because people, especially on YouTube, on multiple sides of the aisle, have found ways to make profit off of it and create views for themselves, it's easy for a lot of them to go after certain other franchises or certain other studios or go after each other. Whereas Planet of the Apes, it's always been this franchise that has been very vocal about where it stands on certain issues and on certain themes. And that paired with, again, going back to what I was talking about with not being quite big enough to be always in the zeitgeist, I think those two things predominantly work hand in hand at keeping these films and keeping this franchise, at least when it comes to the discourse side of it, from being susceptible to those kinds of conversations that we see today way too much online all the time. And then getting more into the fan versus fan stuff, the disagreements that we have, and we definitely have disagreements, you know, there are tons of people, in fact, probably most people that are Planet of the Apes fans don't like the Tim Burton remake. A lot of Planet of the Apes fans really don't like Beneath the Planet of the Apes. I'm not one of them. I actually quite enjoy Beneath the Planet of the Apes, but we're able to discuss these movies and we're able to discuss our disagreements, whether it be you're someone who grew up with Beneath the Planet of the Apes versus someone who grew up with the Caesar trilogy, who looks back at Beneath the Planet of the Apes as a silly, goofy mess. But those two camps don't ever go at each other's throats. There's no hostility. And if there is, it's very rare, at least compared to what I've seen of other franchises. And sure, you may have your occasional older Planet of the Apes fan who maybe looks down on the new movies, and vice versa. You have your younger Planet of the Apes fans who don't necessarily like or have any really appreciation for the older movies, even if they may respect where they came from. But it's very rare when you see these two generations of fans actually going at each other, because for the most part, they just kind of leave each other alone and let each other enjoy what they want to enjoy, or if anything, don't really interact at all. Just this year with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I saw a handful of people come out of that movie and saying, I was disappointed, I was underwhelmed, I thought it was just okay, or I thought it was a kind of a letdown. Whereas the majority seemed to overall at least think it was a pretty good movie. But the people that didn't like it didn't attack it. They didn't act like it ruined their life. They didn't critique it of all of these things. They didn't say it was made with ill intent. They just said they didn't like it and they gave their reasons why. I've had conversations with some of those people. Some of you have had conversations with some of those people, just like they've had conversations with people that did like the movie. And for a handful of reasons, many of which I've already listed, those conversations are able to be peaceful. They're able to be rational. They're able to be even and calm and respectful. But I'm not just talking about the people being hyper negative. There's also the people that come at things from almost a hyper defensive positive position. And the same can be said for people that really loved Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I didn't see a lot of people going, if you didn't like this movie, you're crazy. I didn't see a lot of people saying, if you didn't like this movie, you just didn't get it. You're not a real Planet of the Apes fan. There's none of that going on with this franchise. There's none of that went on with this movie, at least as far as I could tell. That's just something that we are seeing less and less with a lot of other franchises. And then when it comes to the movies themselves and what comes from them, you often see with a lot of these properties now, there's some sort of controversy or divisive entry or divisive statement from a filmmaker or an actor or someone in some case. In all of these major franchises nowadays, I'm not going to go into too much detail with examples, but if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But Planet of the Apes somehow, over the last decade plus, when it's been in its peak popularity, has managed to avoid that. I don't know how. I don't know how long it's going to be able to keep that up. I'm sure something will change one day, maybe. Hopefully I'm wrong, but somehow, some way, Planet of the Apes has managed to stay consistent in quality and has managed to not slip up with having any sort of major controversy, having any sort of major divisiveness, whether it be with the quality of a film or an idea that a film puts forward or a story that a film is telling or an acting choice or a character choice or something that someone in the films or who works on the film says off screen or anything of that nature. Somehow Planet of the Apes has managed to avoid it, and I think that has gone a long way in helping this franchise retain the peace and respectfulness among its fan base, and why that, among with all these other reasons and probably several others that I haven't even mentioned, are why to me it has become clear that it is easily the most peaceful, the most respectful, and in my opinion the overall best fan base, at least that I've ever been a part of. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with what I'm saying here? What do you think of the points I'm making here? Back up what I'm saying in that the Planet of the Apes franchise just has a great fan base, if not the best fan base. Do you think that they go hand in hand, or do you think there's other reasons that I haven't mentioned? Or maybe do you disagree? Have you seen some stuff that I haven't seen? Have you seen the vitriol? Have you seen the anger and the divisiveness somewhere in this franchise's fan base that maybe I haven't seen? I want to know what you guys have to say down in the comments below. Thank you so much for checking out today's video here on Ape Nation. If you liked this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on all things apes. I'll catch you in the next one, so until then, goodbye.